My name is Gary Lewis. I'm a copywriter. That's just one of my hats. Also like to add creative and content designer. So I've worked in UX and product design. So it's a very neat 3 C's right there. Don't hide your light under a bushel, which is a very twee way of saying get yourself out there. Find your people, whether it's creative people or otherwise, that will be a respectful audience. Work out why it is that you don't want to share something and find a way to navigate that, because imposter syndrome hits everyone. I've got a massive creative streak as well, which make things a little bit tricky, when people only see one thing. So I think it's about demonstrating and showing and sharing as much as you can.
Often told that creative careers should be neat, one clear path, one job title, one polished story, but most of us know that's not how it actually works. Today's guest is Gary Lewis, copywriter, creative content designer, UX thinker, and someone who's built a career through what he calls a messy journey, a non-linear, zigzag path shaped by neurodiversity, resilience, and learning the hard way how creativity and business really intersect. In this conversation, we talk about wearing many hats, surviving toxic work environments, being diagnosed later in life, and why not fitting into traditional systems can actually become your creative advantage. If this episode resonates, follow, leave a review, or you can DM me over on Instagram at Creatively Eccentric. If you would love to be a guest and share your story, register to join the guest waitlist. You'll be the first to hear when applications reopen. The link to sign up will be in the show notes.
My narrative keeps shifting and changing. I'm starting to use the phrase non-linear. Zigzaggy is a bit more of an informal description. But as someone who is neurodiverse, and this is demonstrated by a lot of people who've been diagnosed later in life, landing on a career path, all the adversity that kind of goes with being undiagnosed, etc., means that it's not as straightforward as maybe for others who know what they want to do, or they're just kind of comfortable in what they do. So I kind of developed a good work ethic earlier on after leaving school. Kind of kicked out of the house and I was forced go get a job. Um, but didn't know then, and it wasn't until I was 40, about 12 years ago, that I landed in copywriting. But this was after I'd done about 8-9 years in education, as a TA, board of governors. I got onto a PGCE, it didn't work out, but it was the first time I'd really kind of tried to do anything, because up until then work had just been work for paying bills, no structure or anything, or idea. But when I fell into copywriting, it just kind of cemented all the feelings that I'd had but couldn't articulate around creativity. Basically been a cultural sponge for most of my life, 40 years, grew up in the 70s, and seen the best and worst of all those decades, from, for society, culture, films, music, everything. So it has been messy, and it's led to where I am now, which is on a podcast. They didn't exist. It would have been like a talker, phone in on a radio show. But I think what this journey has, and it is a messy journey, has shown me is that even though we're being pushed online, we're living online, AI is doing a number on all of us to a degree, is actually connecting with people is still as important. So whether I'm in a classroom or working in an office with colleagues, or trying to kind of navigate the world from my dining room table here, I think it doesn't matter how messy it gets, as long as you've got people around you, either existing in your network, or friends, or family, or colleagues, or ex-colleagues, but people who are going to be kind of supporting you along the way. Sometimes you have to go and find those people.
I've definitely been through a lot of jobs, and from non-creative jobs, but you sound like you've got a wealth of extra kind of skills to your bow that not the average copywriter would probably have. I was going to mention that is there anything surprising about those experiences that actually prepared you for the type of work that you do right now?
Not intrinsically. When I started copywriting, it felt like an innate skill that had just kind of been dormant, left uncovered, not actually utilized. I always knew that I was told I was good with words, so on. I was a voracious reader, less so now because of screen time. But was a voracious reader when I was younger, ploughing through books, etc. And I think that's where my love of language came from. But yeah, didn't demonstrate it. And when I fell into copywriting, the steepest lessons I learned was about how business works. So creativity, we can write discourse on that, whether it's in you, whether it's learned, how you apply it, so on and so forth, what tools there are. However, applying that to a business setting, that was a kind of baptism by fire. So I think a kind of inner strength carried me along. And there have been many bumps in the road. I'm not going to lie, Heather. Along the way, with kind of toxic bosses, multiple redundancies, um, yeah, projects that weren't, let's say, 100% satisfying for different reasons, mainly from their side. I'm kidding. So it's been a real kind of emotional learning curve more than anything. And I think, yeah, you have to be resilient. So that's the thing I think that has carried me through all the way to where I am today. It doesn't matter what I've done. So I've applied that kind of industriousness and work ethic all along the way, no matter what the setting.
Did you say? I think it was diagnosed quite later on, but your neurodiversity did that come into play with regards to how you work today as well?
Um, it does and it doesn't. It's a weird situation. After being made redundant 14 months ago, prior to that, um, I was going through my diagnosis when I was working full time perm, and lovely colleagues and everything else. But I found the processes and a lot of the way business worked, how slow it was, really challenging. Since then, since my diagnosis, it's helped me understand my strengths and weaknesses a lot better. So a lot more forgiving. And also, literally in the last couple of years, the amount of tools that I could have done with 5 years, 10 years ago is phenomenal, right? Even on this call, we're recording it or a Zoom call, you'd be taking notes and then you can surmise it. You can get action points. You can take those notes and put it into an LLM and interrogate it. And it just makes immersion and learning incredibly quicker and deeper if you use it the right way and responsibly. So this version of me now, my son and I started on the journey at the same time. Both got our diagnoses and medication approval at the same time. And this 2.0 version you see in front of you now is the most optimized version of myself with all the lived experiences, all the creativity. Yet it's a very challenging landscape out there. So I'm the best version of me in the worst version of the job market that I've ever seen.
But I suppose the diagnosis probably before you did, as you didn't know what was going on. Now that you understand, like you were saying, that you know what direction you can take your career options or the people that you want to work with, and know your, like you said, the limitations and your advantages. So it's a double-edged sword. It's a blessing, and I think there's a lot more open discussion about neurodiversity, especially with creatives. There's a lot more of people out there who have these special skills. What do you think about brands who maybe misunderstand neurodiversity in marketing? How can they better understand people who have this?
Um, I am going to flip this back to you for a sec. Do you have a brand in mind? Because I think that's quite a broad question, which is fine. But also, if you bucket in everything else um, that an audience member lens goes through, whether it's someone of color or disability or age or that representation, those gaps are now being documented. They're trying to be tackled, but historically they're huge, and I think there's a lot of catch up there. So yeah, I think it's a kind of yeah, it's a tough one. I think for neurodiversity, you can't see it. I mean, there's a lot of physical conditions. You get the tube stickers. You can't see what's going on inside of people. I do think there's a lot of very strong creative output, but more in the charity sector for mental health, etc. And putting the spotlight on that. There's some amazing kind of brands there, but I don't think brands per se, if we're talking like FMCG, lifestyle, etc., are really considering that. And I don't know how they show it, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky one because it's not straightforward, and I think maybe each case, each brand might have to deal with it slightly differently depending on what their message is as well. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
Agree. I mean, say, okay, Mattel released a Down syndrome Barbie, okay, and very good feedback from communities. I mean, obviously, I'm not the target audience. I can't see anything different about the doll, apart from maybe some headphones and stuff for sensory um, uh, symptoms, not symptoms, for sensory needs. So yeah, it's really tricky. I think if it's about people behind the brands, the creatives, the leaders coming out as and supporting neurodiversity, I think that's definitely more visible. Like you say, there's more and more that identify, but I don't think it filters through to kind of products and brand messaging, etc. Everyone's trying to be all inclusive to everyone, just so you can buy their stuff. All those little lines about we take this seriously.
Exactly. But yeah, I think a lot more of you should ask the people that you're targeting really to come to the table and discuss, not just assume that this is what this type of person is going to be wanting out of a campaign or an ad. Not enough people are being asked within that target market to discuss. It's a very
That
complex.
is yeah, that is a brilliant point. So if we're talking kind of like focus groups and research, etc., then one of my strengths, which has played into content design to a degree, is spotting patterns and gaps in kind of journeys and flows. As I was saying about apps that don't work, you know, there's lots of strengths there that everyone's got their own strengths. Neurodiverse people might have a wider range or a stronger range or just a more diverse range of strengths than the next person, or not, or one like massive strength. But unless you allow someone or ask someone, what is it you do well? And it might feel a little bit left field, but if you, as a kind of manager or HR or whatever, have taken the time to find out what that person thinks and feels and is good at, and that's used in the right environment on the right projects in the right way. That is that's an incredible win, right? But um, I think even at a kind of application form level, it still feels like a tick box exercise. And having been in situations where there's a business group dedicated to LBQT plus or neurodiversity, these groups have to fight for visibility, fight for funding, and are part of a conversation, but not the wider conversation. So there's still kind of ground roots and a groundswell of activity. But I honestly, Heather, I would love to see a neurodiverse driven agency or event. And this is not us ganging up on neurotypicals, but honestly to get that across. And there are lots of good people sharing great things about what it's like to either work with neurodiverse people or just by knowing them. Flag wavers, that's the words I'm looking for. There's a lot of commentary out there, but unless agencies, businesses, brands adopt it openly and inclusively, it still feels like it's just going to be another tick box exercise until someone does something brilliant and then it's shared and wins a Cannes Lion. And
Yeah. But it's also the case where I've spoken to other guests, and I've had one guest who worked for large organizations. The first thing that gets cut are the people that they're trying to target, and they're the first to be not being included in their the main projects. So it's a shame, but it may be at the end of the day a financial decision.
well, it may be. It shouldn't be, because that's a more emotional based decision than anything. If you know, we can all do the job that we've been asked to do. That's why we're there. So the real question is, what's stopping you reducing headcount a different way? Why? Is it because this swathe of this cohort is an easy target? They're not going to know. They're not going to need hand holding or considerations or different ways to access work differently. Whether that's even, for an example, um, being in meetings, sitting in a meeting physically or virtually for 45 minutes or an hour, it's not good for anyone's physical well-being. And if you're neurodiverse, and there are attention and focus and maybe even organization issues, that's a consideration you need to share. If the status quo means that, well, no, we're all doing it and you've just got to, suck it up, as it were, that's not going to work, you know? So yeah, there's a lot that can be done, and I think AI tools are helping everyone navigate their jobs a bit better and make their lives easier, but not to the point of getting rid of the human completely.
Yeah. Another representation that I can relate to, and I'm sure you can, is the working class. And how does class show up in copy or copywriting?
That is a brilliant question. Um, Again, you don't see it because whomever you're writing for, you're writing for the audience or the brand. So I doubt you're ever going to get someone's personal voice creep in, unless the brand is aimed at the working class or tongue in cheek or a nod to it. I see lots of copywriters and creatives. I'm actually in an amazing group called Common People, run by Laura Birch. She runs an agency called Work and Class, about representation of the working class in the creative industry. She's doing amazing work, and I went to an event last week. I think if we're talking about what makes, maybe in particular, working class voice distinctive, it all comes back to lived experiences. So if you've had adversity, even at like education level, growing up, applying for jobs, job market, seeing what your peers are like, kind of tracking what their life journey has been like, pretty smooth. I'm a lot of them. Then yeah, you do start to realize that actually working class people, when articulated, have a very strong voice, strong opinions, but it's how we have to present and be able to be socially fluid, I think, more than a middle class.
Yeah, I definitely feel that working class have to fight doubly hard just to have their voices heard. And then the extra layers of, the environment plays a part of it. And there's a lot of hard grafters out there who are working class, and I think they're the ones. They always say that they're the backbone of the country, really, if you think about it. But of course, they're not the first to be given opportunities as much as, say, middle class or upper class because of who they know and what they know. So yeah.
I agree. I mean, if I was going to be contentious, which I'm not, then does the term working class even exist anymore? We're not going to stray to the right, but the whole kind of climate and rhetoric is putting working class dynamics projecting onto immigrants, stuff like that. It's what is the working class in the UK? The minimum wage doesn't feed anyone, even if you work 60 hours a week. It's not enough. Universal credit, I think, they've obviously tried to tighten everything up, but what is working class? I think people just think working class, oh, you're either working on a building site or you're a DSS scrounger. It's a lot more nuanced than that, right? There's people who go and do cleaning jobs every day and don't get seen or heard and work their fingers to the bone. But yeah, I don't. It's actually quite a good question. What does working class mean in
Yeah, and
2026?
yeah, I agree. And I was just thinking as you were saying that the terminology of working class has changed. It's also a state of mind. Some people have this kind of feeling that they could be working several jobs. Today, I don't feel very working class, but I know that I am working class. I'm reaping the benefits of your family who've worked really
Mm-hmm.
hard and literally are with the true working class. So yes, it's changed over the years, and I think it's a lot of grey areas there.
I agree. I think that foundation is more important than anything, I think, in that working class conversation. Because to a degree, we can talk about the middle class and then it becomes the squeezed middle class. We can all afford some nice things because business has made it that way. Delivery economy in food takeaways. Everyone from the council estate opposite to you to someone living on Park Avenue in North London will be using the same things. So I wouldn't necessarily say that a lot of those mechanisms are they're level for everyone to access, right? And I think that blurs the lines. Everyone's got a mobile phone, even if you're working class, but they might struggle to pay the bill, whereas someone else just doesn't even think about it. I think those are the kind of nuances in today's age.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's definitely a conversation for another podcast episode because that we can go into more depth with that. But I was going to talk to you about more about copywriting and why is copywriting such a powerful skill for creatives who feel overlooked or underestimated, even if writing isn't their main discipline?
Wow. Okay, you want me to get into the pulpit now and deliver a sermon? You can have an ad with no copy and only visuals, and vice versa. The magic happens when the creative spark is there and it's the perfect synergy. But even though our brain recognizes images and can process them maybe slightly quicker or in a different way, there's something about the written word that carries weight, experience, knowledge, and has an emotional feeling straight away. You could look at a Rothko painting and muse over it, but if you read a great line of copy, then that's an instant punch. You're like, oh wow, okay, because it's language, it's how we communicate. Um, I think it's not a dying art. I think it's just been diluted and fragmented with the rise of digital. It's become snackable. But there's even through campaigns of the 80s that we all remember from our childhood that used to run and slogans that are still here. That's the reason why I think copy is still important. And even if it's like a B2B SaaS software provider, avoid using words like innovative solutions, etc., and actually talk to people like humans. It's a stronger proposition. Language gets kind of, like everything in our world, formulated, packaged up, which is why you see the same thing over and over. But I think when good writing or copywriting shines, that's where you investigate a brand, or it leads to brand loyalty. Um, and I don't care what people say. It doesn't matter whether you read or not. You can scan a line or half scan a page, and yeah, it will resonate. One of the things I learned when I was doing more content design work, like the headlines on a web page, etc., H1, H2, big headline, subhead, everything else, you should be able to tell a story or a summary of that page or business just by those headlines. And that's why I think copywriting is about storytelling, it's about educating, it's about informing, it's about entertaining. There are some amazing copywriters out there. Like Vicky Ross is a tone of voice guru. Andrew Bolton, he's incredibly hilarious, but writes great copy. I've networked and met dozens of my peers, and I think it just boils down to an absolute love of the word and your craft. So if it wasn't expressed through copywriting, there would undoubtedly be another way for that language to come out, because it's in you.
It's a lot easier for people to, if who have never used copy before, to experiment with it a bit more and play with it. I think there's an anxiousness about trying to be at words perfect. And I think the way looking at your website, you play with words, and that's entertaining. You have
Yeah.
a light-heartedness about your work, and
That,
which is good.
thank you,
That's what
Heather.
drew me to it.
It's a tricky one. Actually, it's not, right? Authentic. The word authentic has become a little bit of a dirty word. But that tone, my own personal tone, whether it's a personal brand or not, that's how I think and talk. I am a huge humor advocate and user of humor. I can lightning puns, and but I've also got a very broad vocabulary as well. Not always relevant or useful in copywriting, but I love language, and it is reflective of how I communicate. So I'm glad that came across. But going back to what I was saying earlier, it needs to be, as a construct, understood and applied to different scenarios. And I think if business owners or organizations don't care about their copy, right, I've already talked from the heart about a few reasons why it is important. But if you think it's a throwaway kind of add on to what you need to do, then you're missing a trick from connecting with an audience, from selling to someone, from explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it, that makes you as a business or product or service different from everyone else. I went to Excel Business Show last year, and the same terminology, the same flyers with the same kind of, we do this, this, and this, and this gets you that, that, and that. It's just there's less personality in there. It feels like a quick fix and rush job. And I won't dwell on AI again, but if anyone was reticent about writing their own copy or hiring a professional to do it before, it's now tipped the other way. So, actually, I can just get chat to do it. But you still need a human lens to interrogate the outputs. And actually, you only get out what you put in, Heather. So if you put in a rubbish, can you make me a blog post on this for my business? It will look like everyone else in your sector. Same structure, same suggestion, headlines, everything else. So yeah, I think the rise of the copywriter is imminent. Not that we ever kind of went away. It's a tricky time now, but I think maybe our status will be elevated in the next couple of years. especially if we can work out how to string all those tools together and bring super dynamic value to a brand, product, service, or organization.
People are looking for, and as human beings, we can sniff out what, well, it's improving AI. I know it's getting quite close to the human touch, but we can definitely tell when something doesn't feel right, and having that human touch and having that in the words that you use. That's probably why I was drawn to your website, where it's basically, I can tell that a lot of thought has gone into it, but a personality and a person behind it wrote those very funny words on the screen. So because all AI is doing is just pulling information from what's out there already and regurgitating
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. It did take a long time because after my perm stint, I suddenly had to go and rake my memories and hard drives and everything else to kind of collate stuff and work out what I don't know, what my uh, personal brand is. And even since then, talk about AI. In the last few months, I've built out a mirror brain in Claude. So I've gone really deep, personal and professional history, and it nailed my tone of voice instantly. And when I've started talking to it, right, okay, this is what I want to do. I don't know how to do it, like targeting certain sectors to offer different services. And I put my web address in. It said, okay, what's coming across is that you're really good at everything and it's a great tone of voice, but actually, people want you, and someone said this phrase yesterday, people want you to sell them their problems. So, not just about knowing their pain points, here's a fix for that, is actually bringing it to their attention. So, I'm glad you like it. It's going to get an overhaul. It's going to be a bit more punchy and business serious. I won't lose the tone completely because that
Please
would
don't.
be just, yeah, it'd be like chopping an arm or leg off. Um, and I would
You don't have
literally will be
to.
able to stand. Yeah,
No.
thank you. Um, but yeah, full circle, going back to what I was saying about learning about business, it needs a tougher lens. I'm happy with that first iteration. The work that I've put on there is broad and indicative of what I've done. It does need tightening up.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do really well, and it's just a work in progress. We're all a work in progress, and whatever you do, I'm
Life.
sure it'll be fine. Yes, life.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. Obviously, working in your business, and you've encountered so many different people and organisations. What does practical allyship look like when someone is struggling? Not just with their what kind of word of encouragement can you give to someone who needs that kind of support in their business?
Excellent question. I have been that side of desk person that will just like sidle up to you, ask you how you're doing. Um, there's I I can't tell whether it's because of my neurodiversity or not, but I have a huge reserve of empathy, and whether that's from the adversity of my background, or being able to kind of emotionally connect or see things quicker in people. Like, for example, if you're on a call with 20 people and you can see that someone's got their camera off, or they're not contributing, or they're quiet, or they're stammering over their words and they're not confident with what they're saying, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, you reach out to them, things like that. On a day to day in the physical, you can see when people are stressed just from their body language, and it's easy to start a conversation. And I think it's just about making people feel valued. And I'm through and through a people person, Heather. That's the kind of that's my core energy that I thrive on, which is why I do things like this and a lot of networking in person and online. And I've just met some incredible people in the last year, many of them neurodiverse as well. Speaking to one woman today who's in, she, she's in a group that I joined today, but she'd seen me somewhere else. She commented on a post, and I send out a Calendly link. I say, right, if you want to chat, it'd be great to get to know you. Doesn't have to be about business, and just I think knowing about the human condition is a huge part of storytelling, and it fuels, as well as everything else, culture, life, day to day, family. I think those interactions we have with everyone around us fuel how we show up at work or in the work we do. You know, if you don't have that breadth of emotional connection, you can feel isolated. And we've all been there, right? I mean, COVID was hard for everyone. So yeah, I am a lifter upper. I bring energy into the room, and I've written it down as part of my new copy some ways. Oh, on my CV is that I can walk into a room of execs or juniors, and I will be the same person. But that energy I bring with me for other people is not a switch that goes on and
Mm,
off,
right.
basically. You must have seen people like me. They're probably a little bit annoying at times.
No, I think I'm like you in some ways because I remember just a scenario in a workplace where if you know you're the uplifter, your battery does drain sometimes. And I think I did a little test where I say hello to everyone and greet them, and I didn't do that one day, and people were immediately noticed like, what, is she okay? Because I felt like I was carrying a lot of weight for everybody's to keep them motivated, but I didn't have any allies myself to support me. And that was a bit of tricky because I was thinking, okay, I'm doing all the heavy lifting here. Where's my allies? Where's my support? Yeah.
Yes, you pulled me back to the actual question, which I kind of circled around. But if we're talking allies, it's I'm quite good at making friends as well, and that shared experience in the workplace. You know, I've met some incredible people that I'm still friends with. But finding allies, if you don't talk to people or show up in conversations, whether it's within a business or down the pub, if people still do that, if you don't show up and kind of interact with people and recognize who they are and yeah, basically socialize, it's going to be harder to work out who's around you. So I don't go steamrolling in, but if I see something wrong, I will go and help someone. If someone said something that sparked something creatively or culturally within me, like they mentioned something about music, I'll go and have a chat with them about it, you know. Or I overhear someone talking about what they're doing on the weekend and they're looking for a restaurant in South London. I'm like, oh, I know a few. And it starts there, you know, whether it's intrusive or not. But finding your allies starts with a conversation, and that does require a certain amount of confidence. But I think the more anyone does it, the more allies you kind of gather and become. And I think what the last year and a bit has taught me is that the rise of online communities, whether in WhatsApp groups or on platforms, etc., really is on the rise because the whole work from home thing, the hybrid thing, and it's tough to actually find a community. We need that solace as human beings. It's a more digital experience now. But I think whether you're 20 or 60, 50, whatever, if you're still working, luxury of working, um, you can find allies and be an ally, I think, quicker than any time. Like in social media, I've read some reports recently, the trends about micro community and niche audiences. So influencers reaching, um, yeah, and building small communities. So instead of trying to sell or influence en masse, you build a community around a following, etc. You know, it's like becoming a fan of a band or something. You just start following around, and then you realize that actually, wow, tons of other people like this music as well. So we have something in common.
Exactly, yeah. And that's very true. You're saying about we can't just focus on our jobs. Obviously, that's a big part of our lives, and we're there a lot of the time. But it's those smaller communities outside of the design world or the business world, whatever you're in, that you need to have those human connections. So yes, definitely.
Only today, I saw a post on LinkedIn from someone I know who I've met through local Chamber of Commerce. She was also at another event. And in the post, she was quite candid about having moved to the area 6 months ago or a year ago. And she didn't know anyone. She felt lonely. And she said that she went into town and saw a group running with like carrying a stereo and stuff. And it was like a pub run club thing. You know, you go for a run and you have a cheeky drink at the end. Anyway, she did their website, but this is what I'm saying about on the doorstep community, whether it's on your doorstep, online, you know, it just needs galvanizing, I think.
This is part of the conversation I like to have with my guests called Studio Draw. It's a play on words, so that draw, that messy draw that you don't want to talk about, it's kind of like behind the scenes. What is your bad creative habit that you want to or don't want to stop doing? Explain why.
Right, this goes back to my earlier statement of being a voracious reader. Is that I can't leave the written word or print alone. So if I go out networking or leave the house, go somewhere, I'll bring home a copy of the Metro because I've seen an ad in there. I'm going to cut it out, put it in a swipe file. Or I go to a big event and I've collected 50 business cards or scribbled things down on post-it notes, or I've got a massive notebook number 313 unfinished. That, Heather, is the thing that I would like to be better at. And it is the bane of my wife's life. When you're going to sort your box out, why is the stuff on the end of the table? I'm like, I'll do it. I'll get to it.
It's going to be helpful. Yeah. It's going to be useful.
One day, physical stuff. I am, big shout out to Notion as a platform and free AI tool. It's helping me with organization. So all this stuff, I'm slowly working through it and just putting it in organized pages, templates, categorization, so that I can literally bin stuff. That's my curse, is physical media. As you can see.
Yes, definitely. That's only within this frame. If you're watching if you're watching on YouTube, you can definitely see Gary's got a very large collection of vinyl.
Yeah. About 3,500
wow.
Capacity.
If your creativity had a theme song, what would it be?
Blondie, One Way or Another. It's actually that song is actually about a stalker. People think it's just like a couple, but actually that's kind of my creative process. If I get an idea, I've got to just do it and execute it and get there no matter what. Otherwise, it just lives on a post-it note. So yeah, one way or another, I'm going to get you.
Excellent. What's a creative disaster you still laugh or cry about?
Of my own or someone else's?
It's up to you.
Heather, I've never had a creative disaster. That's a lie. I've had esteemed copywriters point out there's a typo on your website. Beep. Disaster. There's the classic Susan Boyle hashtag for her album listening party thing. I'll put the line in the chat. That's really well known. Don't know. Yeah, that's probably like an error, but honestly, without going too far left into a conversation, there's a lot of rubbish out there, right? We go on the buses, tubes, and we're assaulted with out of home ads wherever we go. And it's only because I'm hyper curious that I stop and look. But some of them are woeful. And I'm just surprised how some ads make it to a billboard at a station without being sense checked, without some of had typos as well. And they're well documented. But yeah, my inner copywriter cries when I see something that, if it's about selling a product, doesn't even tell you what the product is, just some kind of random words put together to sound creative.
You're probably pointing at other people's flops, and you just like can't believe that they've done that.
Yeah, but I mean, anyway, that's agency life, right? Pressures from the client, get stuff out. Yeah, I think to give it a headline, we are at a creative peak in our history. But how we go from here with all those tools and everything else, and creating AI films, will actors be phased out? Will singers be phased out? Will painters, die a death? That's in our hands, I think. But in terms of enablement and being able to express yourself, that's we're at the peak point now, and it could go either way.
Cool. What would you tell a creatively eccentric listener who feels unseen or underestimated right now?
I would say don't hide your light under a bushel, which is a very twee way of saying get yourself out there, find your people, whether it's creative people or otherwise, that will be a respectful audience. Work out why it is that you don't want to share something, and find a way to navigate that, because imposter syndrome hits everyone. I think, it's about finding, if you're a brand, it's about finding your audience and an audience who appreciate it and love it. I've been sidelined into kind of B2B and tech because that's where my career kind of started, and I am genuinely curious in it all. But also, I've got a massive creative streak as well, which make things a little bit tricky. When people only see one thing. So I think it's about demonstrating and showing and sharing as much as you can. So whether that's on a platform, within a community, or on a one-to-one level, is find your people by any means necessary.
Brilliant. If anybody wants to reach out to you and support you in your business, how would they do that?
Very easy. They can go to www.garydoescopy.com. That's GARYDOESCOPY. I am very active and instant replier on LinkedIn, so you can find me on there. There's an AI swirly picture of me looking up on my profile, hard to miss. But yeah, if anyone wants to talk about anything that we've covered today, whether it's about mental health, creativity, work, AI, anything, I am open to any kind of conversation.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Heather. It's been a pleasure.